Nova Kooks.
Hello. We need just a few moments of your time.
How do I set you right?
Well, I'm full of nibs and Coca-Cola.
Dave, you're acting weird.
It's hard for me to put all this into words, but this is it. Every single moment that you're in, this is it. This is the moment.
Did you say that you're back on the gravy train?
Little Hen says it's time to rock and roll.
Welcome, listener. You're listening to Nova Kooks. We are four East Coast surfers that don't take ourselves too seriously when it comes to surfing or other things. Hence the name, the Nova Kooks. In this podcast, you will hear us talk about surfing on the East Coast of Canada and hear some funny surf stories from our inexperience along the way. This podcast is meant to not only take you on our surf journey, but to also explore personal growth, adventure, and the world around us, including pop culture and other topics. Today's episode is a different kind of episode for us, as it is a watch party of sorts. We are watching and discussing the movie For the Dream, put together by semi-pro surfer Ben Gravy. So get your popcorn ready. This should be interesting. Of course, at the end of our episode, we will get another awesome question from Charles to finish up. Before we begin, I am Jared, and I'll be your host. I'm seated with Charles, Josh, and David. Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
Yo.
Hello.
I have several questions I want you to consider.
To start off today, the warm-up question is, as Ben Gravy is one of many surf YouTubers, I'm wondering what is a surf YouTuber or social media surfer that you would suggest listeners to follow or at least check out? It's cool to have a couple, and it's cool to have the same. We're going to start with Josh tonight.
Well, that's a great question, Jared.
Well, thank you.
I feel like it's out of line with the film we just watched, but really find Laird Hamilton interesting. More so from a lifestyle perspective. I shouldn't say that. Not more so. I find his skill and career fascinating. Put that to the left, put to the right. His lifestyle, also very intrigued. He's got a serious training routine, all kinds of stuff. Diet. Just an interesting dude.
Does he do a lot of stuff on social media?
A steady stream. I wouldn't say he's like a social media... Well, I mean, he is. He's probably got a few million followers, but like, you know, not the regular content multiple times a day, but it's quality stuff he puts out.
Mm-hmm.
I would say between him and Gabby.
Yes.
Gabby
Totally.
Reese.
Totally.
His professional volleyball wife.
Yeah.
They've got some great stories about being fit and yeah.
And
absolutely.
just perspective as well. She was on a Joe Rogan interview. Yeah.
I always see a lot of people going to his house and like trying to do what he does for exercise and recovery. I remember Maddie Matheson and Benny Blanco went and I forget the name of their show, but I don't know if it's appropriate. But they went and just to see them in the ice bath and like in the pool, it was just hilarious.
I mean, the thing that always comes up for me is he takes a dumbbell, drops down to the bottom of the pool and runs lengths. And it's breath work because he's like a big wave surfer. So it's important, but like just crazy exercise.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah. Charles.
Sure. So yeah, two things that I check out. There is a video blogger based in New Jersey as well. He does these videos called longboard sessions. So I think he's been doing them for the past year or so. He started during COVID, and it's basically just like mapping his longboarding journey there. He would have been, he would have surfed different boards, and he's dedicated to longboard now. So he's kind of like, he'll do videos on different techniques or kind of like comparing different fins and different types of boards. So it's pretty interesting. And then the other thing that I enjoy checking out in terms of surfing would be, there's a guy in Los Angeles named Brad Jacobson, and he just records different beaches and breaks in Los Angeles, in the Los Angeles area. So it's what I enjoy about that is that he's kind of just like filming. He has really great camera. He's filming whoever's like kind of surfing that day, but it does give you a great idea of the geography, the different spots there, whether it be like Huntington Beach or the Wedge or Malibu. It definitely gives you some perspective on what those spots are like.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah. What about you,
I'm
Dave?
going to check that out.
Me too.
The first person who jumped in my mind is Nathan Florence, who's John Florence's brother. And there's also Ivan Florence, the sort of wunderkinds who are growing up. But obviously John Florence is, arguably one of the best surfers right now.
Yeah.
And sort of Ivan and Nathan are professional, but they've kind of found their way differently than just being on the, WCT tour. And Nathan kind of gets into more of the vlogging, and, we'll give a really interesting take, being the sibling of John growing up with, Pipeline right there. But also he's a pretty interesting guy, good stories. And then the second guy, who probably doesn't put as much content out there, but I love following his Instagram, and he's got a few episodes called Flowish Fridays. Is a guy named CJ Nelson out of Santa Cruz, California. And I just, as I'm sitting there, kind of thinking, and obviously I don't know these people at all, but, through the experience of YouTube, you kind of get a feel for people a little bit, I feel. And that's its appeal. He was probably one of the best longboarders ever, of his generation. And then I think kind of the culture of the surfers of that time kind of also got into the drinking aspect, and has since become sober and realized that we only have so much time left. I want to surf 8 hours every day. Was just I've wasted time drinking and not surfing. And has fully thrown himself back into surfing, and he's so stylish, and he's got boards that are made through Firewire, and he's just super stylish and ergonomic, and just he's just all about maximum fun in the ocean and just having as much fun surfing as you can. So nice. I think about him.
I like that.
Cool.
I don't know.
It's just to link it with Ben Gravy a little, not to put the cart before the horse, but just kind of that realizing how much they love the ocean, how much they love this thing. Why would I do anything to take away that enjoyment and time?
That revelation is such a powerful thing. Even as everyone has their own version of it in their life.
No question.
It's you can all relate to what they're expressing, and you're yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess for me, I find when we first all started surfing a lot more seriously, I was of course on the internet hunting for people that had tips and tricks, and just to try to get some sage advice from other people that have done it, so that I can hold on to it while we're out there. Mm-hmm. And in that journey, it's sort of taken me through, there was one group of, they don't really do anything now. They're not active on YouTube anymore, or at least I don't think they are. There was these kids and their dad, I Surf Tribe, this family that lives in Costa Rica, and I just started following them, and it was pretty cool because these kids were really young. I don't know, when I first started watching, the boy Atua, I think was his name, and his sister, they had this series where they would surf anything. So they'd we're gonna surf this door, we're gonna surf a board unwaxed, we're gonna surf a board with no fins, we're gonna surf a board backwards, and it was just really cool to see these kids doing this kind of these cool ideas so young, and they had really good tips about choosing boards, and they'd talk you through how to set up your board, how to put the leash on, and I really enjoyed that in my early days. But then I started discovering Jamie O'Brien and Ben Gravy, and I just forgot his name again, the skimboarder, Blair Conklin. Yeah, and just sort of following all of those guys. And I think that I sort of discovered them through checking out Casey Neistat, who's a YouTuber. I'm sure people know that name now, but he ended up going to a wave pool with all those guys, I think, and I thought that was pretty cool. And I started following them, and that kind of made me excited to watch this movie tonight. Before we watch the movie, though, I just one thing that I just started watching recently, and I mentioned to Charles the other day. There's this guy. I don't know much about him, but I found him on Instagram. It's called Martin Shapes. I've been really getting into watching like surf shapers. Like there's some videos on YouTube where you can watch like a surfboard start from nothing but just a brick of styrofoam, and then it shows you like the glassing, and they just show you the whole process. And some are really like, it'll lull you to sleep if you're having a hard time getting to sleep. Put on a board shaping video.
So people use blanks. I've never really well, I have looked a bit. I had an idea at one point and never followed through with it, but a blank has the outline of a surfboard, and really it's the shaper's style in terms of what it turns out to be, but it is cut in the shape of a surfboard.
Like an oversized.
Loosely cut.
Yeah.
So there'd be like a fun board that you could take down a few inches here and there, but
Right.
a rough outline. Yeah.
So a shaper really has a style in terms of how they carve out that blank.
Totally. Yeah, like the rocker and everything would be totally up to the shaper. Yeah.
But you can get them with a rocker.
I mean,
There's lots of different versions that you could get.
But like within that,
Yeah.
the shaper would have.
What is a rocker for the listeners?
So front to back, sort of the curve front to back.
Yeah.
So
like how much it's curved in the front and how much it's curved in the back.
If like how far is that going up into the air essentially? Like if you were to put on a flat surface.
So Jared and Charles, you would have a high rocker or a more extreme rocker than say my torque
For our
board?
long boards.
Yeah.
Yeah. For our 9/6 boards. Yes.
Cool.
That's correct. But this guy, Martin Shapes, is pretty cool because he's, just recently he posted a video of him. I guess his father was a shaper as well. And I think they must live in California. And he saw like a dead agave tree and like cut it down so that he could fix this agave tree surfboard that his dad made in like 1990 or something. And he's just sort of telling the story, but he tells the story so dry. And then the way that like the videos end, it just sort of stops sort of dead. He always like makes it kind of like you want more, but you're happy that he stopped where he did. It's like, I guess you got to just sort of see it. He's an interesting guy. But it's really enjoyable to see him in his shop. And he always he'll hold the board up at the beginning when it's just the big styrofoam brick. And then he'll hold it up at the end when he's finished his board. And it's just really cool. That's that. Let's watch a movie, guys.
What do you want to watch?
Next, please.
And there was a point when I started getting comments from people saying, "You've surfed so many states, why don't you just surf them all?" And of course it's just a joke. And in my head, that was the most ingenious idea I'd ever heard. Because I knew it was something that no one had ever done.
And he got out of it. He just took it and said, "I'm going to change the world. I'm going to make a difference."
Here we are, and we just finished watching the movie For the Dream by semi-pro surfer Ben Gravy. Ben Gravy has made a career out of quick surf trips and quick edits for a dedicated fan base, mostly on YouTube. He is a traveler, always wearing a smile and spreading positivity and good humor to all 50 states in this movie, and this movie is also about his life. To start off, I just want to sort of talk about when I first got introduced to Ben Gravy was also the first time I started realizing that soft top surfboards aren't just for beginners. And he really for me, the way that I view Ben Gravy, when I first realized who he was as a guy that was destigmatizing the use of soft top surfboards and catching small waves and how much you can do on whitewash or nothing, the wake of a ferry boat. I thought that was awesome. And it's so funny because, when I first heard of him, that was 2 or 3 years ago. And now we're two of us have soft tops. So I think it's kind of cool. I really attribute like me having a soft top a little bit to Ben Gravy. I think I saw him in his kitchen showing what surfboards you should use when you're starting out. And I thought that was pretty cool, as he's sponsored by Wave Bandit, which is a soft top company that I think is attached to Catch Surf.
I think they have to be.
I think they're like cousins or a parent company or something.
Yeah, step brothers.
Yeah. They're like the Squire of Fender guitars.
The Squire. Yeah, good call.
Yeah. Yeah, so we decided to watch this movie as a group because recently in one of our past episodes, we were talking about how Nova Scotia has a tidal bore and how some people have been known to surf it. And we were talking about how it's like one of Nova Scotia's greatest novelty waves. And then we started talking about novelty wave surfers, which brought us to Ben Gravy.
How did you surf the tidal bore this summer?
We should totally try to catch that.
Ben Gravy should join us.
Let's tag him
For
in our
the
podcast.
dream.
Well, and then we find out, like, I don't want to spoil the movie, but there's a tidal bore in the movie, and I was like, he's already done it. He's not going to want to come join us.
Yeah, but he's done maybe in 50 states. We don't know.
Yeah.
But maybe he needs to do it in Canada too.
Maybe he has to hit all
it's his first Canadian wave
of
I
all the
don't know.
province and territories.
I don't know, Ben.
Ben Gravy calling you out.
Next dream.
We'll compare vans and surfboards and surf the tidal bore.
Yeah. You want your claim to be... What's your
What's your claim? What's your claim?
Well, just,
that
I
from?
mean, speaking of people
Did
that...
he say that?
That's his saying, yeah.
In his vlog, he says a lot.
Oh, I don't...
And speaking of people that video blog, there's a local blog called Fun After 50. It's this guy that does he surfs a bit, but he goes to different beaches throughout Nova Scotia. But he's also doing like other activities. But Ben has actually commented on his Martinique video there.
Really?
Cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ben Gravy?
nice
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Fun after
Cool.
50.
So he's aware, and it's it's just this guy. I don't know if he's like retired and he's just, but he's out there just kind of like doing it and taking videos. So
He sounds like a kook.
Well, that's one thing I got out of this movie, and I just disclaimer for the listener: you should probably go check the movie out, but we might dip into a little bit of spoilers. I think we'll probably try to be as careful as possible, but
You can't spoil inspiration, Jared. You just watch it.
Ben Gravy talks about how he's like a semi-pro and how he doesn't take himself too seriously, and how when he stopped taking himself so seriously, that's when things really got more success started coming his way. And it's interesting you say that about this guy, because like, yeah, it's like cyclical. in a
Yeah.
way. That
Well,
Ben
it's-
Gravy's commenting on him. That's
oh,
cool.
yeah. It's neat.
Very
They're
cool.
connected. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I had no idea. At the beginning of the movie, it sort of talks about how Ben like started surfing, and then he was 14 years old, and he got sponsored by Billabong. I think that's what he said. And he he was like super excited to like try to join that world tour in the future. But he got, he was hanging out with a lot of his other friends, and they started making, stunt videos and partying a lot. And yeah, I guess it got really carried away. And I guess he did that for a long time and was having like some moderate success with it. And then I guess the surf sponsors weren't really pleased with it and pulled the cord and took him off. And I think he was devastated, and then kind of went down spiraling, and then he broke his leg and doing a really dumb trick. And that was sort of like the beginning of a transformation for him.
Did you guys watch those types of video? I don't want to say the title of those
that's
types
okay.
of videos, but
Yeah, let's just say Jack, and I'll bleep it
Yeah.
out.
I mean, some people got, big celebrity and still are
Yeah.
based on those types of throwing yourself into
I think when it
things, videos.
first came out like that, we all know who the first individuals were to come out with that kind of style of video. And I saw the first one, and then I thought, well, that was enough. That was funny.
Right.
Well,
Then another one came out, and another one came out. I don't think I've seen any other ones but the first one. I think there's a fifth one at this point.
the
quite
movie,
possibly.
No, there was a fourth one that just came out.
Yeah, and it was funny the first time, but then you're just kind of like,
Well, the history of that was very similar. Like, I think Ben Gravy must have came later doing this stuff because this was happening for a while in like the early 2000s.
the one I'm talking about is
because it started with like skateboarding videos.
Yeah,
Sure.
these
Like
guys were
CKY and
skateboarders, and like even like the filmmaker like Spike Jones, I believe he started like with them and filming stuff.
Yeah,
so.
well, he
really?
gathered.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he gathered a couple of them because there was the CKY people, the Big Brother people, which might have been a bit of mixture with that. But then there was like Steve-O, and then Johnny Knoxville like was a pretty face to lead it.
Well, they were all together. Like, what's his name? Bam. What's his last name?
Margera.
Well, Bam was part of CKY, which was like a group of
Oh, was he? I
yeah.
guess
So
I
they
didn't know
got that whole crew of people
That makes sense.
with like Ryan Dunn and then they got Chris Pontius was like another source. Yeah. I used to watch it, Dave.
No,
Yeah.
no judgment. I never, and seeing Ben hurt himself. Like, I mean, I don't know. I guess.
But that
I
was
have no judgment about them. I just when you're seeing them do that,
Yeah.
you're like, come on. I
Well,
don't.
But that also stemmed from like old skate videos where at the end of a
Yeah.
skate video, instead of bloopers, they'd have all of their falls at the end. Like,
yeah, that's different though than like.
but I think it's sort of stemmed from that.
Oh, sure, yeah. It was a quick sell. Like,
And I think it's one of those things. If if you're creating content, you're trying to. I think like initially they were putting this stuff like up on YouTube where like if you have these outrageous stunts, then you're likely going to get views, and then it's like you gotta
ramps
keep
up.
raising the bar. So you're probably getting a fix from that. But what was really interesting about the movie is sort of like he has this injury, and then he kind of like starts kind of like questioning like, well, what am I doing? I might not be able to like walk or surf again. And then in terms of like stopping drinking and then like focusing on things, he's kind of like he's still very much still doing the same thing that he's always done. Because what I found interesting was that he was constantly like videotaping his whole life and everything. And then when he kind of went for this more sincere approach, I guess a more honest approach in terms of like documenting his injury, and then also kind of like the first like novelty wave, it was sort of like in some ways it was almost like those stunts again, where it was sort of like, oh, this is something like different and kind of fun, and he was able to tap into that. So it's like having I guess that skill set that he's always been building, but I guess channeling it into something a bit more honest and positive.
It's interesting you say that because I feel like with his injury, he got sober to heal. And then he sort of dipped back into it. But because he was sober enough, he had a chance to like have that window to see what he was doing wrong and like see what his choices were. So he was able to like, I think it allowed him to wake up. And then you talk about the novelty wave bringing back this sort of stunt mentality. But it was more well thought out. Like he was clearer thinking about what he was doing and being able to be safe while he did it. Like, because then there was one pivotal moment in the movie that all I wanted, a piece of me just wanted him to go and overcome it, but it was like the most dangerous river wave he'd ever seen. And, even when he went in there, like he wore a helmet and was, it looked like he was trying to be safe. And, 4 years before that, he wouldn't have been safe, and we wouldn't have Ben Gravy with us.
it was a good point. The fact he didn't go back, I think, says he actually has evolved.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and the point about him going back to drinking, like, this isn't about drinking in my life, but like I've had times where I've thought I'd like grown and become a new version of myself. And then you get confident in that space, and then all of a sudden you go back to your old ways for a minute, and you realize how slippery that slope is. And sometimes you need that to like check yourself so that you can then go forward. And it was interesting to see that captured in a vlog format and resonate with that. I thought that was cool.
How did you guys feel about the movie after knowing a little bit about Ben Gravy and then watching this?
Well, it's interesting because I don't follow people as much as you guys do. Like I have, folks I follow on Instagram and things I'm into, and like I don't go down the surfing like YouTube channel sort of path as much. And so I didn't really know who he was, to be completely honest with you. And so it was interesting to just dive into it and see this documentary. And when we first started it, the beginning really lays out like who he was before, and then it sets you up perfectly as it transitions through.
Well,
and
I think you made a comment like, "Is this what we're watching?" Like,
yeah, I was like, "What are we watching?" Like, I don't want to do a podcast on this. And it was kind of that raw emotion or reaction while I'm watching it that really, I mean, it set me up. And I was like, as it unfolded, I was like, oh, okay. And then I'm comparing like transitions I've made in my life and like all those kind of things. And I was like, wow, okay.
Yeah. He really did he did a big transition.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the other thing, I'm like, sensitive is not the right word, but you asked about those types of videos from like the early 2000s and moving through and like how they've gained popularity and what this guy was doing. And like, I really don't, it was funny the first time I watched it because I was like, these guys are insane. But then when you turn it into a whole social media thing, I don't like content made for the sake of getting people to watch it to get followers. I don't like that. And I feel that those type of videos, that's what they are. Yeah. And these people just do these ridiculous things. They don't make any sense. They're always outrageous. And the only intent is to get people to watch it.
Clickbait almost.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
You saying that made me feel like I think that's why I enjoyed this movie, because when I'm watching that stuff, it's because I'm looking for the thing that I like in it, that like the message, like the storyline. And he's like taken all of his YouTube videos and childhood videos and made it into this nice little package of what I'm always looking for when I watch his videos. Like, I'm not as excited as seeing him like mingle with his fans in his YouTube videos. I want to see the surfing, and I want to see the story, and I want to hear about how he dug himself out of that.
Oh yeah. And so in terms of the film, like obviously that had to be in there, but it totally, it took me
a minute
halfway through the video to like get over that, because I don't digest that whole thing that's going on in the world with social media. I love social media, but that side of it, attention seeking is not something I resonate with.
Sure. So you hadn't really seen his vlog per se?
No, I haven't seen it at all.
Yeah. Charles, had you ever seen any of his
I would have
YouTube
seen
stuff?
like a couple of clips before, because they would have just like shown up in my YouTube feed. So I've like seen him like surfing like the fairy waves and all that, and I thought that was cool. But I really didn't know much about his story until we decided that we were going to do this podcast and watch the movie, and I would have listened to like a brief podcast interview that he did that kind of gave me some context of his journey, but not to the extent that the movie did. But what I found like really interesting about the movie in terms of like some themes that we've discussed here is just, this is someone that is very much, I mean, he loves surfing, but he's very much a filmmaker as well. And he's someone that's always documented his life. So it's sort of like interesting kind of if by documenting yourself or recording things, like the same ideas, like whether you're writing a journal or whatnot, does that kind of increase one's understanding of oneself? So I kind of think about that, and then I also think like, is that exhausting in a way if you're constantly documenting? And one thing he refers to, like in the video, when he's saying like, I'm in this van, like I'm going to go do it. I'm going to like surf 50 states, which is like fun. And it looks like fantastic and he's having a ball, but he also like brings attention to the fact that like, so I, drive 10 hours, I surf the wave, then I edit it, I go to sleep, I wake up the next day, and then I drive like another like 8 to 10 hours. So an appreciation for the amount of work,
bit of a slog
that
too.
goes into the content that he is creating.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, and like, I the timeline's not clear in the movie, but it seems like that whole 50 state thing took maybe 3 years.
I think so. Yeah, I think he took a break from it. He gets
So and like, that's an interesting thing that happens with media as well. It's like, I think everybody in the room knows, like, I call myself like a couch climber because I've watched probably every climbing documentary there is out there, and I'm watching it and I'm like getting into it. I'm like, I'm gonna do this. Like, I'm super into this.
Right.
I don't have the context of what it's like to, you'll have to bleep this out, but in a bag hanging off a mountain, like,
Right.
you know, there's all these pieces you don't think about.
The
And it's
editing.
like that, like 3 years or like, or
time.
or drive 10 hours, surf, sleep, or edit, sleep, repeat for 5 months.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that happens with media where we're all super into it. We think this is all possible. And it's hard.
We get these bite-sized sort of...
It's hard to do these things that inspire people. Like
And he kind
takes
of refers
grit.
to that in the end in terms of like, hey, like, you know, things are possible, but it takes like a lot of hard work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And like put yourself in that situation. Like if I was doing that, I think I'd probably, I don't know if I would have finished. I think that slog sounds, it's great, but when you're the one by yourself doing it on the road, like I'm sure that's depressing. Like, would I have made it through? Like I think about these things when I watch these types of videos as well, because I was inspired by the documentary, but
I'm almost thinking too, just while you guys are talking about that, you know, obviously there was an addiction, you know, issue there. Being on the road alone, especially, not that he was always on the alone. I wonder if that was easier because he was away from sort of maybe some influences. You know, sometimes friends that you hang out with who are going for a beer could be that sort of issue, or if being alone is like, I wonder about that, like sitting in a hotel room or in your van in the middle of nowhere, you know, having to drive 10 hours, not that he would drink and drive, but just, I just think like, was that a help or a hurt? Like, or would that provide more opportunity or less opportunity or equal?
I don't know. I wonder that type of thing as well. Cause like boredom is a powerful thing.
Oh yeah. Missing your family or your support network. And
yeah. I mean, you know, think of a night at home when you're bored on the couch. What do you want to do? You want to eat some chips or whatever?
He's driven and definitely has, like, in that, the way that he did all of that Jack kind of stuff. Watching it, he has a lot of he's a hyper guy, I think, and he's driven. So I find that if he's driving in that van, he's probably not as you know, I don't know. I think boredom might be a bit different for him, thinking just based on his younger life and how he's
I also think sometimes, like, if you're driven to like he had a pretty extreme accident and it was clearly his own fault.
Right.
And he had a lot of time to reflect on that. I think that those types of like rock bottom sort of place, I feel like there's a real growth that happens there. And so I think that like when you have faced something like that and come out the other side and realize the opportunity you've been granted, like the fact that he talked about the arteries in his leg were damaged. It's like, I'm not going to lose my leg. Like, I think when you've been to that extreme, when you come out of it, you're different.
Well, so I think he was even in shock at that part when...
I guess my point is, like, we talk about him experiencing boredom. We talk about driving 10 hours, surf, edit, sleep. I feel like it's not as hard for someone that's been pushed up against the rock or the wall like that. Yeah.
And it's
he's got perspective. I guess.
And it's also like one of those things, like that is a slog, but that's also pretty amazing as well, where you're getting to, you know, see a whole country, and you have this
the
mission
opportunity
to surf.
That's just it as well. And like,
it's like putting a puzzle together, like, where's the wave in every state? Like, that's kind of, I bet you that was fun planning it.
And I think it's like, you know, it is that like accomplishment of doing something. We've, you know, when we've kind of like talked previously in terms of like, you know, different like hikes or triathlons and stuff that we would have been part of. So it's sort of like, you know, it's like, it can be a grind at certain times, but it's like, there's something great about that.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I mean, it's like the microcosm of life.
Yeah.
Like, not to be, I don't want to sound like a downer, but like the the majority of life is kind of mundane and a bit boring, and then there's these things that like peak up, and we try to live our lives and put the most value and like things into it. And I think that's kind of what makes his trip and that whole experience significant, real in my mind. Like
the journey.
Yeah, and the cool thing about a video is that like it kind of minimizes all the mundane stuff and gives us all the highlights, and that's why you're so inspired by a video like that. And I feel like that's part of what it is to make a film. But if you look at the whole experience, like it is this significant life experience, because there's, you know, long periods of lows, and the excitement is very short. Like maybe he drives 10 hours and catches a 30-second wave,
right?
And then edits a video for 2 hours, and then he sleeps and he drives again, like that. There's a real perspective for life in there of like, you gotta grab on to the nuggets.
Well, it's funny, yeah. Just to go back to something you said couch climber, how you're a self-proclaimed couch climber. I really liked that you said that, because there was a point in the movie where it talked about how he's inspired like people to get out and try not just surfing, but to have fun doing other things. And you know, he had a friend there who said that he had autism, and how that was kind of a nice little touching nugget of the movie that I really liked. But it also talked about how, you know, he's inspiring his family members. He inspired Jamie O'Brien to start vlogging. Like, he's an inspiring dude. And I forget who said it, but one person was sort of was being interviewed about Ben, and how, you know, like you don't have to search out and be a pro at what you're trying to do. Just go do it and have fun. And I think I posted on the Nova Kooks thing the other day about people paddleboarding. There was a video of people paddleboarding and jumping over. Yeah. And the whole thing was like that you don't need to be good at your hobby to call it your hobby. And I think that we get in our way, like I do, and stop ourselves from trying to do things so often, like hiking or mountain climbing or whatever. Like, there's so many things that we just, you know, we can tell our stories like, oh, well, you know, I'm not going to go do that thing because this might happen or that might happen, or I got to go do it alone. And
or you just like, there's always going to be somebody that's better.
Sure.
That's the way life works. But like, you know, some of my other hobbies, like I played guitar for a very long time, but I still feel awkward to call myself a musician. And it's like, why?
Right.
Because there's people that are better than I am. Like, what do I care? It's something I enjoy. Like, I don't care.
Right.
I mean, I say that, and part of me obviously does, because I still find it awkward from time to time, but it's kind of that thing.
Well, that goes back to something that you and I used to always say, there's an audience for everything when it comes to music.
Well, that's also true, and I think this film says that there's an audience for everything, because we were just inspired by someone that says, hey, I'm not pro. I'm not really anything. I'm just out there doing what I like to do.
And just being real and showing your faults. And
And I think one of the lines from the movie was, everybody's a semi-pro.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, like that.
Yeah. But at the same time, I feel that this is a person who makes a living from surfing. Like, he's sponsored like crazy. He's sponsored by Catch Surf, Wave Bandit, Hyperflex. Like, he makes a clear living from surfing. So I think, doesn't that mean you're pro?
I mean, yeah.
But I like how he like makes fun of himself, like, because he calls, what did he say? Like, I'm like the super kook or something. Like,
yeah, that's right.
I like that. It's true. Like, he is, I suppose, by definition, a pro because he's making a living at it, but he's a spokesperson for
surf and stoke.
Yeah.
And the dream.
For the dream.
Like, do what you
want.
He's
a spokesperson for...
Do what you want to do.
And that's another thing, too. Like, he, in his YouTube videos, he always asks, what's your claim?
Yeah.
And, like, sort of catches people like deer in headlights, like, what's your claim?
And people get, like, really, like, you know, some people know it's coming, so they're ready, but a lot of people are like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But they always have a good answer.
Yeah, most people just like try to say his other catchphrases like I'm fully nuking or
Yeah,
like for
yeah.
the dream.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
but
It's
yeah,
a good question though.
it is a good question.
He had a traumatic experience to help him claim his peace.
Yeah.
Whereas I think maybe for the rest of it, it takes a little longer.
Yeah, I think that like, we're talking about goals and stuff, and I think like the biggest thing I got from the movie was like a big takeaway, and from this conversation, is to climb off of the couch and get your goal, like whatever the goal is, like, start working towards it. And if you're, whether your goal is to climb that corporate ladder, if that's what you want to do it. Or if your goal is to stand on a surfboard on a wave, go do it.
Yeah.
It's happening now.
Well, and I think, whether it is the corporate ladder or it is what he's doing with the surfboard, there's nothing wrong with either if that's what you're geared for.
If that's what you want.
Like some people want you to present them with the maze and they'll find their way through it. In my mind, the maze is the corporate ladder, because you have to navigate what's there and you have to perform. And like, there's that whole piece. Whereas he has this whole kind of like discovery piece. I'm finding myself. This is what I love. This is what I want to do. I'm going to put myself out there like this. I'm going to make my perspective available to the public, and they can see me following what I'm passionate about. So like, I think that, if those are two ends of the spectrum, they're both totally okay. And if anything, the message I might take from it is find where you exist on that spectrum and own it.
Yeah.
Claim it.
I think owning it, like putting it out there.
Yeah.
Not being afraid, like, I think a lot of people, and I get why, and I've done it, and I think most people have, is you might have this dream and you kind of, hide it a little bit, or at least veer off course. And, sometimes you have to, but put it out there. What do you want to do? And then like I'm not, this is going to sound like it's easy. It isn't easy. Putting it out there and then just being like, this is me. I'm going to fail.
Sure.
Maybe, or maybe not.
But yeah, there's going to be some things that
There'll be blips.
there's going to be some hard days, but go for it. Like put 110, go for it. Put the work in.
I always bring things back to film, but I remember the film critic like Roger Ebert, he would get like a lot of like people studying film saying like to him like, how do I become a filmmaker? And he basically says like, you call yourself a filmmaker. Like that's how it starts. And if you don't believe it, then and then kind of like if you're putting it out there, you're believing in yourself. Like I'm a filmmaker, I'm a surfer, I'm a musician, or whatnot, right? And then also when you're this thing that you might be hiding, maybe you like show it, and then someone else is like, oh, I'm really into that too, and then
It's funny. I got two things: a connection to that and a connection to what you said, Dave. There's this guy, Tim Ferriss. You may have heard of him. He's written a bunch of books like 4-Hour Work Week and 4-Hour Body. But one thing he said in the 4-Hour Body, that it's not just about like physical appearance, but he said if you're wanting to look like an Olympic swimmer, behave like an Olympic swimmer and do what they do. And it's the same thing with everything else. If you want to, you're not going to be a climber if you're just watching it. You got to go climb, and something you said talking about, Dave, you made a contract. Is that what you said? You made a contract with yourself by saying it. One thing that like came to mind, I just get nervous sometimes when you share things that you want to do. Something that Tim Ferriss also said was he's nicknamed this thing that I've totally like taken on as my own saying. I say it all the time. It really stuck with me. It's called the bike shed effect, where if you tell somebody that you're thinking of building a bike shed, that everybody has an opinion on bike sheds. So all the way down to the color of paint, to like what type of shingle you should use, and how are you going to use, like, are you going to put crushed rock down first? You should put crushed rock down first, and like all of this, so much so that your vision of what that bike shed looked like changes so much that you don't build the bike shed.
Right.
So I don't know. I guess I'm bringing that up just because that was the connection I made, but also like you got to be careful to compete with that because, you know, don't let other people sway you if you are talking a lot about it.
True.
I guess. Is that what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
No, it does. It does.
And I think there is a fine line there because sometimes you can put something out there and somebody tells you all the reasons you can't do it.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah.
And I think that you have to be cognizant of that. I think part of what I'm getting at, and I've only realized this recently.
And jealousy is an evil beast.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing I've realized recently, like I've started to gain some traction on some like goals and things like that. And I realized that I always had them as like this big thing in my mind, this intangible thing. And then I would psych myself out and be like, yeah, well, you want that, but you're never going to achieve it. Like, that's not possible. And then recently my perspective has shifted and I've just started to break things down. And I realized like, it's not these massive choices or changes. It's like day by day, like if it's whatever the goal might be, it's an action item toward that per day. Or I don't know, if you want to eat a certain way, it's like, well, okay, you know, little tiny things.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes back to the movie in terms of like what it's about, him surfing those 50 states. It's sort of like, you know, that's a 3-year journey for him. And he kind of got like sidetracked where it almost wasn't going to happen. But it is doing the work to make
do the
things
work.
happen.
Yeah. And he said that in the documentary, but like, what's everybody knows the saying, like, how are you going to eat the elephant?
Right.
But
one bite
at a time. Like I never broke down things I wanted to do like that.
Right.
And like, I wish I had this perspective years ago, but like, that's how it works. It's like, you want something, you work for it. You want to get paid, you work.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, my goal is my pay. Let's work.
Yep. Agreed.
Sometimes it sucks, but like, keep the end goal in mind, you know?
Yep.
Okay, before we move on, was there any other last comments about the movie that anybody had? Any other notes? Anything brought to mind?
I don't know. I mean, he is an inspiring guy, and that it's kind of one of those things that we go back to, and we've referenced like people quoting it before, like, you know, the best surfer in the water is the one that's having the most fun. So just, you know, getting up, getting out in the ocean, and just doing it or trying it, right? So
actually, for me, he's looking at these waves and he's super stoked for them.
And they're not big at all.
No,
Yeah,
and like
cool.
sometimes I drive out to Martinique and I'm like, well, maybe I won't get in.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh,
Just
like,
go.
Well,
he's
go.
driving 10 hours. Like,
yeah.
I'm driving 40 minutes and I'm like, well, it's a little cold this morning.
And he's driving 10 hours for a wave the size of what we're like, maybe not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Charles and I went out the other day and there wasn't a whole lot there, but Charles is like, no, we came here to do this. Let's get
Yeah.
in.
Good.
Yeah,
And we had a great time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
and I think I mean, something that's nice about that in terms of like whether, you know, he's talking about like these river waves or like these like lake surfers, right? Where there's only like it could be small waves and only a certain time of the year that it's happening. It's something that people might not consider like, you know, that's a great wave. But it could be about, you know, anything that you're really into, where it might be like this movie or piece of music or whatnot that isn't like super popular, but it has a great meaning to you, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's like it doesn't need to be great. Just do it.
Sure could do.
It's okay.
Sharkadoodle do.
Sharkadoodle-doo.
Content right here. All right. Good movie. Recommend it. Definitely
Yeah.
don't eat a whole bag of nibs like Dave just did.
That was a dream.
Oh, man.
It's that time again for the final question from Charles. You're up, Charles.
This is Charles.
okay, thematically keeping with gravy, what is your favorite gravy, and share a special gravy memory?
Well, I'll go first.
Wow.
This is deep. I'm passionate about gravy.
Yes.
My favorite kind of gravy is turkey gravy. No question. Turkey gravy on like French fries for leftovers, turkey gravy on stuffing. You like turkey gravy. I don't like roast beef gravy. It's not good. I don't like roast beef. But I will accept beef gravy when I'm getting poutine. And poutine doesn't need to be classy. My favorite poutine is from Willie's Poutine Window on Blower Street in Halifax.
Nice.
Shout out. And I like to get the stuffing poutine.
Yeah, he does.
Like, oh yeah.
You know, it's funny. Somebody, one of our listeners, wrote me like crying about the stuffing poutine, like in a recent episode.
Did we already talk about stuffing
You've
poutine?
talked about it like 3 times.
It's been a rolling theme.
I think that was your ultimate Nova Scotia experience.
Yeah.
I think
Is that
your
what I
answer.
offered up?
Yes.
Oh,
But
man.
you brought it up another time too.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I haven't had it since possibly the Bahamas concert.
Oh wow, like
You're
3
due.
years.
Yeah,
ago.
like don't get me wrong, I love it, but like we
You're
talk
due.
about addiction in the film we just watched. Like it's a slippery slope, so I have to personally be careful. But man, it's good.
Once you
and-
hit 40, it's a once a
Oh.
year stuffing poutine.
Well, and they have like
Rule.
Yeah.
before COVID, outside the window, they had like the big can of ketchup with the pumper on it, and you could just lace that thing with like ketchup and gravy and poutine.
I feel like I'm there.
I don't know. I've had the stuffing poutine and I can't. You don't feel right after.
Yeah.
I don't.
All right.
Again, slippery slope, moderation with
You have to
everything.
take a breath
But like I've had a tumultuous relationship with a few things in my life. Butter tarts,
Butter tarts.
dangerous, slippery slope.
Super nibs.
Well,
That's David's slippery
actually,
slope.
Sorry.
not so much nibs, but peanut M&Ms, and the other one would be Willie's poutine.
Wow.
Nice.
I didn't see Charles's question sending
I think
Josh down that slippery slope.
I think that question was a wonderful one.
All right. Who's next? Who would like to go next?
Oh, we still have to share.
Gravy. Gravy.
Favorite gravy and special gravy memory.
I'm good to go unless you want to go first.
Go for it.
All right. So, gravy. I, unlike Josh, like a nice dark gravy. On a fry and a poutine. We are from Canada. Poutine is like a national dish. I think it must be at this point. And my worst moment with poutine, I know you're like a memory that it's like a family memory now. My wife was pregnant. We were doing our last child-free pre-child road trip together, and we were in Quebec City, and I used to live in Quebec, and I really wanted to go to Chez Ashton's because they have like a window. They used to have like, I don't know, 30 or more flavors of poutine, like different ways you could have it. They even had poutine for vegans. Like they had like a pecan like sauce that they'd use. I, of course, am lactose intolerant, and sometimes we'll call it lactose attacks. I will have, and sorry, I said that like Yoda, but
Attack lactose. Attack lactose I have.
But I ended up having said attack while driving. We were driving to the next city, to Montreal, and I remember that I could no longer think straight. These attacks were coming in waves that were like pure pain, and I needed to stop the car as quick as I could. And I remember that I scared my wife that day because I was driving on a very busy road, and I remember like we stopped at a mall, and I had to run and take care of myself, and I wasn't able to communicate a whole lot to her. And this was kind of, iPhones didn't really exist yet. So I was
Trying to BBM her?
What's that?
Trying to BBM her?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Blackberry Messenger?
That's I think what I had at the time, yeah. But I just remember like, come find me in the closest bathroom from this door. I'll be there. And yeah, that was really bad. So that was a bad gravy moment.
Traumatic gravy memory, but probably more the cheese than the gravy that was responsible.
But it's kind of like an association. So like when it took me a while to get back to having poutine or gravy again, you know.
And with your last comment there, would you say that you're back on the gravy train?
Thank you, Charles. Thank you. Thank you for that.
David, favorite gravy?
Yeah.
Gravy memory?
What a weird question.
Fully nuking. Gravy. I'm going to go. There's nothing super memorable, but I will say that a lot of times growing up on Quimpool Road, we'd always go to the Ardmore Tea Room. Which
nice.
Is fantastic breakfast
Halifax
spot.
staple.
Yeah, I believe it's a staple. And for some strange reason, a hot hamburger sandwich has always been one of my top 5 things that I order in such a spot. You know, a lovely diner, a greasy spoon, whatever you want to call it.
Nice.
Classic diner.
Yeah, exactly. And getting a hot hamburger sandwich with the peas on top. And I believe that usually it's a beef gravy. Sorry, Josh. No. I for some reason, when I think gravy, I think of sitting in the Ardmore Tea Room, you know, with probably a delicious Coca-Cola to wash it down. And I will remember the Ardmore Tea Room, their gravy always had there was something there that I couldn't put my finger on. And one night it came to me. They put a little bit of cinnamon in there. Little bit of cinnamon.
I thought you were going to say cigarette ash.
There's always a cigarette butt in everyone. Every 10th has a cigarette butt you have to find. Never mind. Sorry, Ardmore Tea Room. Now, no, they've got a little bit of cinnamon in there, and one night I finally put my finger on it, and that was an exciting moment for me. And gravy.
I feel
That's
that.
thrilling.
I think Charles and I have had many hot turkey sandwiches together.
Hot turkey.
That's the thing they do.
Thank you for your answer, David. That actually lines up nice. And Josh's comment there and segueing into my gravy experiences. So
I really like a good turkey sandwich.
But definitely a turkey gravy all the way. And in terms of like how I grew up, that's kind of like a family thing. Not the hot hamburger, but the hot turkey sandwich. So have traveled, far and wide, searching for the best hot turkey sandwich. And we do have like some pretty solid choices here in Nova Scotia. But I'm gonna give a shout out to the Aulick Big Stop. Not all big stops, Irving Big Stops are created equal. The Aulick Big Stop in New Brunswick,
Irving
when you're coming home from PEI or further into New Brunswick. Great gravy there, great hot turkey there.
They got lovely plover. Are they plover? Plover statues outside it. Yeah.
Have you ever seen the size of the cakes that they sell there?
Oh, and the pies? Crazy.
Oh my God.
The pies.
Like the cakes are like
I don't know if I've ever stopped.
10 inches thick.
It like big stops are, generally good, like hearty eating, but there's something special about that Aulick Big Stop.
Okay,
But if you're
that's on my
looking,
list.
They're doing it right there.
if you're looking for the best hot turkey in Nova Scotia, it's in the Cedar House, which is just in Cape Breton once you get off the Sea Isle Bridge there.
What is it?
It's called the Cedar House.
Cedar.
Yep. So it's a restaurant and bakery as well. Get some baked goods to go after.
That's a
your
hot tip
turkey.
right there.
Yeah.
That's a hot tip.
Yeah.
Hot turkey.
Hot turkey.
Tip for a hot turkey.
Get on the gravy train.
Fully nuking on the gravy train.
On the gravy train.
Nice. All right. Well, I think that brings us to our end. Thanks for the question, Charles. So to wrap this one up and put a bow on it, I just want to thank you, Ben Gravy, for inspiring us with your soft tops and your kooky moves. And make it out to Nova Scotia. Come check out the Tattle Boar with us. And listener, if you haven't checked out Ben Gravy's movie, For the Dream, it's super inspiring to try new things and live in the now. Yeah. I've been your host, Jared Gates.
I will be David Roger.
I'm Josh Aya.
I'm Charles. What's your claim?
Be yourself. Do the things that you want to do deep inside of your heart, and the universe will roll your red carpet out in front of you, and you truly will have the opportunity to live your dream life.
We're dreaming. Thank you guys for all the stoke. Thank you for all the love. Thank you guys for everything. Nub Nation for the win. I love you for the dream.
Thanks for listening to Nova Kooks. Join us next time for more kooky surf moments, beginner surf tips, music and movie talks, questions from Charles, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram. Thanks and be well.
You are Charles, though.
Thank God.